And we are live here to chat about TV from this week. And you know what, Kate? Hold on. Let me make some mic noises as I get my mic up close and personal. We have a lot of TV to talk about because I watched a lot of TV this week. Now, I know, Kate, that you hold on. Let me mute myself in this other tab. Wow. Do I sound like that? Is that really what my voice sounds like? You all put up with that? That's crazy. I know you've been really good and haven't been like watching a bunch of stuff, but you're gonna have to listen to a lot. And Kate, I found your doppelganger on a show this week, and we're gonna have to talk about that too. But before we get into how much TV you probably didn't watch this week, do you have any news for us? And how are you?
I'm doing great, and I do have some news. You're going to get excited about this one. A few months back, I may have mentioned that there is a reality TV show coming to our screens based on Pride and Prejudice. Well, it was supposed to be on Peacock, now it's going to be on NBC, and they've changed the name from Pride and Prejudice and Experiment in Romance to The Courtship, and we're going to get it on March 6th. Now, I know I have said again and again, I never will watch a reality TV show, but there's a lot about this that I have questions. So I may watch an episode or two and we'll see how it goes.
I am definitely watching this. Kate, I'm kind of surprised because at the time you sent it to me, I thought it was going to be like either like some random internet streaming show or on like a tiny network. I had no idea until just now that this was actually going to be on NBC. That's huge.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to be on Peacock, so I didn't see any information. I didn't do a lot of searching, but I didn't see any information as to why they switched. But I did see that announcement on one of the Jane Austen fan accounts I follow. So that's where that news came from. On a kind of similar note, the other thing I brought in today was last year I watched a show called All Creatures Great and Small. Loved it, and I completely forgot about it. And so they're halfway through their second season. So if anybody else that was watching this was watching that show as well and didn't know it was back, it's back. So I have plans to catch up on that soon.
You know, at the time that you were, I never watched All Creatures Great and Small, but at the time that you were watching it, I swear like 5 or 6 people like on my timeline were watching it and were all like freaking out about it. So I have to assume it's good.
Yeah, from last season I watched was really good, and I'm sure it's just as good this season. I just have to go back and watch it now that I just didn't. I guess I wasn't following the right news account to tell me that it was on.
Right? Well, that's exciting. We're about to have like a, let me use a $5 word. We're about to have a paucity of fiction TV over the next couple weeks because the Olympics are going to be hitting. I'm so excited. I get super into the Olympics. I'll be less into them this time around because like my pride and joys that I've been watching since I was like tiny won't be in it. But I will be watching all of the other like figure skating stuff and getting into it and developing opinions about random sports like curling and snowboarding, just like everybody else. And during that time, there's not going to be like the same volume of regularly scheduled television that usually comes out, even on shows that are not on NBC and NBC networks, which is what the Olympic broadcasts generally are on. They're just like a bunch of other shows take hiatuses just so they, is that the plural of hiatuses? Hiati?
Yeah, hiati.
That sounds sketchy. A bunch of other shows will take like semi hiatuses. So I don't know. Maybe we'll like take a week off during that time too, or we can like a marathon. I have a suggestion. I'll save it till the end of something we could marathon that I have not seen and is brand new, and I really want to watch. So we'll see. I'll pitch that at the end. But that's coming up in the next couple weeks. That's the only bit of news I have.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear your suggestion.
I will save it, and it's a really long title, and I remember like 5 words from it. So just we'll get there when we get there. So let's start off with Superman and Lois because I have a bunch of other rants about a bunch of other shows. We can see that our thumbnail show is This Is Us, and I have opinions about this week's episode and how it relates to some other obnoxious characters I've been watching this week. But Superman and Lois, I'm just going to come out and say I thought they had a really strong episode this week. And I know you just watched it really shortly before us going live right now. What did you think of Superman and Lois this week?
Strong is a relative term, okay? It's strong for season 2. It's strong
Yeah,
compared to what we've been getting. It's still not to the level I was getting and enjoying season 1, but they were pulling some lines and stories and they were focusing on things that are kind of harkening back to their strong suit. So it was very much a Lois centric episode where she was like morally conflicted about certain things. And when it came to other characters as well, is they were pulling from some of the better storylines with these characters. I thought that they actually did a really great job with Sarah, with Jordan, with Jonathan. All of their storylines were doing really well. Um, I always tend to like Clark's story, but I actually never really care about the action, and that's kind of the same here. But that's where we are.
agreed. I'm gonna, before I dive into my opinions, I will give a quick shout out in the chat. Carey's here and he recommends we binge Snowpiercer. Carey, that's on my list. It's on my list next to the thing that I'm gonna pitch. And I do want to watch it. And in fact, I did start watching Snowpiercer at one point a couple months ago. Maybe more than a couple months ago. But I accidentally started with season 2 and I was so confused that I exited out of it. And then I realized I had accidentally started with season 2 instead of season 1. So that was operator error. It seemed interesting. I was just like, I have no idea what's going on. This seems like I missed something. The narrator, she missed something. So it stayed on my list. I will give it another shot again. So Superman and Lois, I'm totally with you where like I am very interested in Clark's storyline and in his, family and, I for somebody like myself who tends to like tune out male characters, whatever, I do actually like care about his journey. I just don't really care about the action that much. Very rarely do I, and this was not an example of it. Um, but it is interesting to me to see a continuation of something that we talked about last week when you, me, and Carey were on. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, we were on Twitter Spaces last week. We gave that a shot. That was fun. Might give it another shot. We'll see. For now, we're back on YouTube, by the way. Because you wouldn't want to miss my pretty face on the day that I have the worst foundation of all time, literally driest skin ever. It's the YSL All Hours Foundation 24-hour wear. That's too much. That's too many hours. It's so
Put them
dry.
on
Anyways,
glass, Cammie.
what now?
I said put them on glass.
I did, and this was given to me for free too. So really unwarranted slander, but I'm sorry. It's not for me. It's not for me. My skin looks very dry right now. It's too much. It's a little too thick. Anyways, we're back on YouTube, and when we were on Twitter Spaces, we were talking about the fact that one of the things they've done with Clark's storyline is like in season 1 they kind of set him up as like super dad, like he is a very good father, like he has good morals, good intentions, is trying, like he's not perfect, but he, like in comparison to the other dads on this show like Kyle, like he's good, right? But this season they've put specific roadblocks in his way such that it justifies and necessitates the additional adult presence that they have in the house. You can see that, and we talked about that last week. You see that continuing this week when you see, when he's opening up to John about some things, when John is talking him through, just some of the conflicts he's been having about, these, the physical damage that is being done to him and how that is impacting like his presence at home. It is showing how necessary John is, not just in the fight but also as a presence in their home. And I think that has been very interesting because typically when we're seeing somebody become a necessary part of the team, what they do is we saw this on Arrow all the time. They'll weaken somebody's powers. It's like, oh, Oliver could take on this bad guy of the week, but he's either weaker, for plot reasons or whatever, so that it necessitates, uh any of the new team Arrow or whatever to come in and like back him up or something like that. We're not really seeing that with Superman. It's not so much that he is weaker, he is, but it's more so that like he also needs like help at home. And that has, for somebody like myself who doesn't watch for the action, that has been a rewarding balance, that they're not just saying he's there because Superman is weak. They're saying he's there because he needs like literal backup and help at home. Stormy in the chat says, hi, everyone. I haven't watched this week's This Is Us, but I wanted to stop in. Hi, Stormy. We're going to talk about This Is Us shortly. I'll try not to spoil too much. But right now we're talking about Superman and Lois. I'm not sure if you've been watching that. Let me know if you have. And if you haven't, Stormy, tell us what you have been watching this week. I'm excited to hear. Okay, Kate, what did you think specifically of Lois and the cult storyline and her, buddy employee now doubting her?
So I liked it in the regard that I like Lois and I can see where they're going. I can see that they're using this as a setup to explore her and how she feels about how she does her job and like her family and extending that whole aspect of the story. Great. Thought the acting was done excellently. Never have a problem with her and her acting. And even the writing, for some of it, I really liked. I think that there were some really good moments about like how we were talking about you wanted to protect me, but really you were just kind of you like there's an amount of I could understand Lucy's frustration of like you're not listening to me, you're just trying to protect me, and it's not the same thing. Um, where it gets frustrating though to me is there was a lot of it kind of and they set it up because clearly there's something they're gonna have to fill in later. But there's so much of this like ominous, confusing, non-mentioned ascending to a plane and like there is some ascension or whatever, and that there's something that Lois left out. And it's not clearly explained in this episode what so specifically she left out of her article, other than that like Lucy felt like there should be more there. So to me, the emotional response of Christy kind of felt unwarranted. Like she had explained to Christy, like, it's my sister. I disclosed that I have a bias in the story. Like that's all been established, that she recognized that it was her family involved, and therefore, like, there were things that she was probably not going to be the most like warranted to talk about. But like she felt like she had to expose this cult leader.
Mm-hmm.
For them to that last episode and then this episode go see basically Christy see that there was a detail of Lucy's story that Lois didn't mention because Lois thought she was protecting Lucy, and Christy completely switching the table and being so against Lois. That was confusing to me. And it's not that Christy has always been extremely supportive of Lois's secrecy. She has called Lois out on it before, but she's not a main character. She doesn't like it's never really affected the story too much.
Mm-hmm.
And for it to all of a sudden be like this kind of implication that there's one thing that she's kind of left out that Chrissy doesn't know about, it was kind of a dramatic shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole us not knowing what the secret is, it kind of felt me like hollow. Like I'm like, and the point is,
Mm-hmm.
like I know because the structure of the show, when we watch CW, especially with superhero shows, I know it's probably going to be something about how like it has alien influence, or like she is actually ascending because like things and whatever. I understand that because of this is how the show works. But from a storytelling perspective, there was too much of us being told she kept this terrible secret. And you can keep the secret from the audience as well for a time, but it was bearing too much weight on the fact that we didn't know and they didn't know. It was just secret. And I was like, okay, cool. What was it?
Right. I think if they had at least revealed a part of it or revealed Lois's take
Mhm.
on it or kind of alluded to it but left a lot of questions about the mechanics or whether alien is a metaphor or not or what, because there was also kind of an allusion to her seeing the future and some kind of future of her, she thinks she becomes something bad or becomes something good one way or the other she's trying to avoid. And it almost seemed, and tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm reading too much into like some very ambiguous lines, it almost seemed like they were saying that Lois's sister, you know while on alien drugs or influence whatever was going on, sees some kind of future in which she is a bad person if she doesn't do X, like if she isn't a part of this cult. And that is why she's staying a part of this cult. But I feel like I might be almost like either reading too much into something or maybe misreading a couple lines. Were they alluding to that to you?
I I kind of got that impression a little bit, but I was more focused on my frustration with how they were doing it because I was kind of, as I was watching it, trying to figure out what they were saying. So I think I had that thought. I also had the thought of like that she was trying to protect Lois in some weird way, or like maybe like I was just trying to puzzle the pieces together, and that was a possible answer. But I was far more focused on the necessity of having the secret revealed for this to make sense and for me to care about it a lot. The only reason I care about it right now is because I like Lois so much. If I didn't, I think I would have thought that was a really weak point in the episode.
Mm-hmm. Carey in the chat says he likes that they highlight Lois's editorial choices and omissions. While he understands her decisions, he appreciates that those decisions have consequences. You can't pick and choose the truth. I completely agree. This is a show that's doing
Oh
a
yeah.
really good job on not making things too terribly black and white. It's not that they're painting either Lois nor Clark to be morally gray. They are, Lois is on the side of right and justice and, is a heroine. Clark is likewise, truth, justice, American way, blah, 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 all of
Mm-hmm.
that. But that doesn't mean that they don't ever make mistakes or have situations where there's two choices and both are somewhat morally gray or something that seems like a morally black and white choice at the time. Like she was admitting things that she, may have thought were, truly just nonsense, like not something that's, worthy of being news, the ramblings of a lunatic. And that may have been her judgment call at the time. And then later it turns out it's not. For example, if I were a journalist, I'm not, and somebody were ranting to me about aliens or said, this happened, but it was aliens that did it, I likely also would make the judgment call to not print that as fact. I might even, like that might not be a part of their, story to me that I would highlight unless it was like specifically they said that, don't print, unless it was some sort of contract of like, don't print my words unless you also print that I said this. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
in those kind of judgment calls, it's very relatable and could still be in this universe painted as wrong. And I think they know the audience is like us. We're pretty sympathetic to Lois, so they can have her make a bad judgment and not lose the support.
Yeah. Well, and there's also a little bit of aspect of it's not entirely clear if she published this article before or after she knew Clark and had the boys. I would assume that it's after. I think it's probably more recent, like within the past 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still there's a bit of ambiguity about when exactly this happened,
Mm-hmm.
and you could argue either way of like the rantings of about aliens and whatever before she knew Clark would have sounded absurd. I mean,
That's
if
true.
if there's barely any like acknowledgement that aliens exist before she knows Clark, why would she ever believe anything like, about that like that Lucy? And then afterwards, she actually is not only protecting Lucy but protecting her entire family. So
Mm-hmm.
the concept to me of her omitting things, and especially her admitting that she's omitting things, like admitting like I have a bias, I have a relative that was involved in this situation, and her admit that in the beginning of an article to me is full clearance. This is,
Hmm.
at this point, it's less of an expose. This is not like a I would never use this in the court of law type thing, but this is like a this is my experience. This person has done things that I think are evil, and I think there should be more focus on it type article because of the warnings she gave. But it's Lois, and she has to get the truth out there some way. So that's how I view the entirety of this article situation anyway. And I am able to look at it and go, okay, we were if we were always completely honest all of the time, everything would have been revealed, everything would have been reported. But the problem is it's you in the world we live in. That's impossible. We can't do that, especially with her life and how it goes. So totally understand that, and we can support her while still saying she is the good character, and this be a slightly morally gray choice that she's made. It's still hard for me to truly care until I know exactly what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just Lady in Glasses and Lucy conspiring to go, oops, gotcha for Lois. And we're like, why? What has she not told us?
Right.
Um, for us to really care. So that was my whole thing. It was like, I halfway really enjoyed it because of the great acting of what was hitting really well. But then the drawback of it going like, why does this matter? Was really distracting.
It could be that the quote unquote secret is something that would be related to, Superman and Superman's presence, and she doesn't want to, report on something about Superman's presence and identity. We have a question in the chat, and I was initially going to toss it to you, but it also relates to the Flash, so I guess I can't do that. Stormy says, I don't watch Superman and Lois, but I do have a question. Is Lois, as a journalist, written better than Iris? Not that it's a high bar to do better than The Flash. That is a great question because Kate's saying yes, and yes is a fair answer, but I'm going to cite specific reasons why she is written better as a journalist. So with Lois, they have within the span of a season and change shown a career progression for her that expands beyond the show. She came into this as a journalist with credentials, as a well respected, whatever, and they frequently allude to her history, to her career history. One of the things that I really like about the writing of her is that they don't shy away from writing her as older and experienced. They're not writing her as like end of her career senior executive, owns several news company. It's not like that, but they're also not having her like go out, on the, she's just out there like interviewing random people on the street over just any article. She's also not a newbie. So they have her career at a certain point. They acknowledge the fact that she takes almost a bit of like kind of a career cut to work at the place that she chooses to work in Smallville, but she still does, she has an employee, she's a team she's building, she's a story she's after. But they frequently allude to her past history as well, and they tie it into present day. And this episode's an example of it, but they've done this as well before when they've had, previous people come after her story or know her based on her history of like investigative journalism. But because it is investigative journalism, they actually show her do investigation. And that investigation is not just, I'm going to go out and try to get a piece of information that nobody already knows, or I'm going to use inside sources at the police. And it is not almost ever that she's using an inside source through Superman, even though that is very common in the comics that Superman gets, or Lois Lane gets information due to her proximity to Superman. It's talked about that happened, but even in the flashbacks like that we saw in season 1, she is already a great investigative reporter prior to her interactions with Clark, and we see her be that baby reporter then. But when we see her present day, we actually see her like talk through and mentally put the pieces together in the span of a couple lines. They will show her actually, deducing things or figuring out who needs to be talked to. Or an example I think from this week's episode was when she was like, oh, okay, so if you are trying to undercut the most reputable journalist in the world, where'd he go? Okay, we'd go to the dark web. Just these kind of, it doesn't take too long, but they actually give her credit for her own intellectual skills, for her own putting in the time in the flashbacks. And unfortunately, we saw almost none of those things with Iris. We see an attempt towards the end of The Flash. I'm kind of calling it the end of The Flash because I'm sure The Flash will end soon, where they're trying to kind of give Iris a career progression by giving her a career, but they don't actually take the time to show how she got there. They're just sort of like, and she has an office and she has employees and they all call her boss every few lines. So like she has to be up there. But they don't take the time to build a character for her like they have with Lois. Okay, Kate, your turn.
Well, I was just going to say, part of it I think comes down to Superman and Lois feels very much like early seasons of Arrow, or even more so on the other extreme of like the superhero aspect is like C-level plotline.
Yeah.
The basis of this story is it is a family of healthy like relationships and some extraordinary circumstances. So it's far more focused. So like they're together because they met being journalists and now they're parents together, rather than like even with Felicity, they met and basically got to know each other and fell in love in the bunker. So it's a very different tone.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, like when they focus on her career, it's very much more just like the objective being like, because she's a reporter and that's just what she does. And like, it's not because she's going and reporting or finding intel to support the superhero storyline. If anything, a lot of times the superhero storylines are set up to support the familial storylines,
Mm-hmm.
which is opposite of a lot of the CW superhero shows, specifically The Flash.
Mm-hmm. Carey says he likes also that they portray Christine Beppo as a savvy news investigator as well.
Yeah.
Strongly agree. And they give her her own career personality. It's not just that she has her own personality as a character. I can tell there's this thoughtfulness and this way of seeing women as multi-dimensional characters in this as much as you can in a CW show. Like I recognize this is 40 something minutes and side characters will only get a few minutes, and I'm not asking them to do a biopic on every side character. But even with a side character who is a woman, we see she has a personality and she also has a career style. Her investigative style is also different than Lois as well. We also see her earlier in her career. There's just a thoughtfulness to even the few lines that some side characters get that are, I like Allegra, for example, from The Flash, but she's not allowed to develop this work personality and personality that is sort of simultaneously complex in the same way, unfortunately. Stormy points out we got to see Felicity progress as a businesswoman. She didn't just have employees fawning over her. Absolutely agree. And sometimes I struggled where they didn't let her progress as a businesswoman, or Felicity was only progressing as a businesswoman and they weren't allowing her personal life to be shown for a couple episodes. So sometimes there's a natural give and take there where you can't get everything, or they're winning on some areas, but the writing sucks on another area or whatever. And that's totally okay. But I can recognize, and I know Kate, you can recognize as well, we can kind of recognize when the effort is there and when the intention is there. And that buys you a lot of grace, as that buys the creators a lot of grace if they do ever stumble. We had some complaints early on in season 2, but we're still here talking about it as our main show that we're talking about, because they bought a lot of grace in season 1 and they're continuing to do so by making good attempts at their characters, and it just keeps it entertaining. I'm still entertained even when my least favorite character, Kyle, is on screen there at the end, because I'm like, I was right. He's a piece of shit. Like, look at, so that is what you want out of a show. They're keeping me pulled back in through multiple characters being, complex, interesting, and just entertaining. Like, I'll sit through a high school football game and be entertained, even though it's, not my favorite characters and I can't keep these boys' names straight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is because it has some of the notable tropes, and we are comparing it to the rest of the Arrowverse for obvious reasons, but it is a show more than any of the other ones, no matter how much they like to argue otherwise, that is focused so fully on the family aspect and the relationship and the dynamics far more than anything else. And because of that, I think the character work is better. I think the attention to detail on the character side's better. It does stumble. We had issues with the first two episodes. Episode 3 started to buy it back, and this episode 4, it still wasn't perfect. I still had the issue with the secret and whatever, but I was able to watch it and go, okay, I fully am invested in Lois's story. I understand where they're going. I just wish they would have gotten to this specific point faster, or maybe worded it a little differently. But I would say that, yeah, they're doing a much better job of all careers, everybody's lives outside of the hero is so much more developed than any of the other shows. Even compared to Felicity, no matter how much I love her,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that Lois has a better career development than Felicity.
Definitely. And that's good. That's what we want to see. We want to see, what comes after that is informed by the original better in some ways
Mm-hmm.
than the original.
Yeah.
Stormy, you made a comment earlier that I kind of skipped over, and it's because I wanted to use it as a transition point. You recommended some shows to us. And you recommended Good Sam. You said you're loving that because you adore Sophia Bush. And if we're looking for new comedies, you recommend Pivoting Grand Crew and Abbott Elementary. I just want to say I have marathoned the entirety of Abbott Elementary which is only 6 episodes and they're half-hour episodes, over the course of the last week, and I loved it. It is so enjoyable. It is, it took me like an episode and a half to kind of get it, not to get into it. I was entertained every second, but it took me like an episode and a half to kind of get the vibe and get it and get who our main character was. I think our main character is like this kind of nerdy, enthusiastic, kind of like if Jess from New Girl was a teacher, but like also was cool instead of like had a little bit of cool instead of the, kind of the take some of the fairy
The
essence that Jess
the
from New Girl. Say it
the
again.
quirky and so instead of just overwhelming quirky, it's quirky and cool.
Yeah, like there's just like this element
Okay.
of cool, but then like also nerdy and like a teacher. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting character, and there's something kind of like you've met people like her, you can kind of relate to her type of vibe. My cat is climbing on my lap. Oh, hi, honey. See the tail? It's his appearance.
uh,
Anyway, Abbott Elementary has been fantastic, and it has a really good ship. It has a really good ship. It has this very like Pam and Jim from The Office type of ship. I'm all about it. She has a loser boyfriend, so they like can't that gets a completely, like there's no they're denying there's anything romantic there, but it's totally romantic. It's so good.
just like Pam and Jim.
Literally just like Pam and Jim. Just like Pam and Jim. Ah, it's so good. It's very funny. It's very heartwarming. And I just want to say I've watched more than my fair share of movies, TV shows, etc., that are like this inspirational thing that's set in like some underfunded school, like Freedom Riders, that kind of vibe. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's great, that's lovely, whatever, but it's kind of depressing to watch. I'm sorry, it's depressing to watch. This is not depressing. This is not like a woe is me, whatever. Like, yes, it's set in like a mildly underfunded school, but it's not like tearjerker, kids are starving, whatever. It's like a funny The Office-esque show. Very good. Would recommend, and I'm recommending it because I'm going to talk about a show later that I'm not recommending to you. So this is my balance.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and talk about what I watched this week
I would
then?
love that. Please do. Take it away.
Okay. So I
Cracks
mentioned
knuckles.
so I mentioned it last week that it was going to come out. It's The Legend of Vox Machina. So
Mhm.
it was the first 3 episodes came out last Friday.
Ooh, okay.
It's based on like 400 hours of in-game critical or D&D play. It's extensive backlog to get into, but the first 3 episodes, the first two were a story that were never actually told in the uh, live streamed campaign. It's
Mhm.
kind of setting up the characters and giving you a hint as to one of the big bads that we're going to encounter later. And it's so funny. It's very raunchy and crude, which I can sometimes enjoy. There was a bit of it that sometimes I was like, maybe that's a little too much, but I could get over it because episode 3 gets into one of the best stories that they have on the show. It focuses on their dark and brooding male, like noble character. He was of nobility, and things happened, and now he's kind of fighting back for his home. And it inspired the name of like No Mercy Percy. It it's a show that's a lot of humor and a lot of dirty humor, especially. Um, and action, but it's also a very sentimental and emotional show. In the first episode, 20-minute episode, I was nearly crying at the end,
Aw.
just because of like the story arc that they're telling. Because they are, I mean, inside and out, the people that are writing this are the people that created characters and play the same characters for like I don't know how many years, and they're all best friends in real life, so they know these characters and they know how to make a connection. Um, because of that, it feels like you're watching best friends both pick at each other and save each other all at the same time. And it's so great to see. So getting into that third episode, that it's the start of this really compelling arc that is a story a lot about morality and the dark, good versus evil, and like the darkness in people that are trying to be good and things like that, and saving each other from the evil. It's a really good representation of the original story, and I'm very excited because Friday they come out with the next 3 episodes,
What
kind of
platform
exploring
is
the
it
rest
on?
of that
Can you
part.
remind me?
It's on Prime.
Prime.
It's on
Okay.
Prime.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I'm not a big anime person. It's not my thing normally. I've watched a couple before because there's a specific story I wanted to watch,
Mhm.
and this is one of those things where I'm like, it's still not my style. I'm not. I probably won't get into it specifically because I liked watching the anime aspect of it, but it's the translation and like the visual communication of so many different things that you have to watch hundreds and hundreds of hours to get anywhere else, and it's done in such a like passionate and distinct way that you can't help but not feel excited watching it. It's just so good.
Okay. I'm sold. I'm going to give it a shot. I've been
Okay.
needing to have something to fill that nerdy void that was previously filled by like Witcher, Wheel of Time type of thing. And I'm
Okay.
okay
Yeah.
with it being animated. What now?
I was gonna say, okay, then yeah, it'll fill that. And I want to know like your favorite character. I want to know all your character opinion. I'm really excited if you're gonna watch it.
My favorite character is going to be whichever one is voiced by Gina Torres. I can only assume. But I will.
We haven't met her character yet, but
Oh,
I
well.
would assume this one. I don't know. Uh, there's two female. There's no. So there's 3 female characters that are main, and I could see you loving any of the 3. One of my favorites is one of the female leads, but I think you might actually like the other one. But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. I shall report back. I will give it a shot.
Okay.
Um, and I'm glad that there's 3 episodes out already. I know the fourth one's this week. That way, I can really give like a good chunk of it a shot. I like when
Mm-hmm.
I like when a good chunk of a new show is released at first. Okay. This Is Us is shown on screen right now. And I watched it in the middle, I watched it right between finishing all of season 1 of Euphoria, which was a trip, and starting season 2 of Euphoria. And I started to realize that there was a bit of a connection. And it's why I wanted to really dive into the fact that I watched these two this week. Now, Kate, you know that I say this often when it has to do with teen characters, that I am particularly patient with teen characters. They're not usually my favorites, but that's okay. I'm not a teen. Teen characters don't need to be my favorites. But I'm pretty patient when teen characters are annoying because I feel like they're supposed to be annoying. I'm pretty patient when they make bad decisions because I feel like they're supposed to make bad decisions. They're teenagers. You know what I mean? But this week, I started to realize that some shows are taking that a bit too far. And I don't mean that in terms of the subject matter of Euphoria, which is like sex and drugs and violence and whatever. Like, that's not too far. That's the subject matter of the show. It's fine. Like if everybody is on Molly and naked all the time during episodes. It is what it is. We knew what we signed up for in this, in this show, whatever. It's this idea that just because a character is like a dumb teen, they can do things that are obnoxious and we're still supposed to forgive them. And I'm going to give This Is Us as an example. In This Is Us, and I'm going to go over a couple spoilers from way past seasons. So if you don't know, that's kind of on you. In This Is Us, you have a family of triplets, 2 twins and one's adopted, that were all born on the same day. And you have these flashbacks back and forth to them as a kid, them as a teen, and then their present day life. And in their present day life, I think they're about 40 years old, 38 to 40, something like that. I don't remember. They had some notable birthday around there. And when they're kids and when they're teens, as you would expect, they act like kids, they act like teens. The kids are rambunctious and spill things and run away at the mall. As teens, they're emo and, throw things and make bad decisions and fall in love at 18 and think they want to get married, that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, okay, that's fairly typical teen things. I didn't do any of that, but I understand that some people make these bad decisions and do whatever, right? But there's this, I always harp on Kevin and Kate, and I usually harp on Kevin and how much I'm rooting for him to live miserably for the rest of his life. And fortunately, it seems like he's on the path to do so. So this week I have to pick on Kate because she was the problem. Now, recall, if I don't know if you know much about the background of This Is Us, their father dies in a fire. He dies in a fire going back for their dog, their family dog. I think it was actually technically Kate's dog. And that was when they are children. They're like 10 or something like that. So the flashbacks this week are to when I believe they're 17 or 18, approaching 18. And it's been, years, and their mother has not really got out and dated. I think they had shown her maybe tried to tentatively go on one coffee date. She's hanging out with a family friend a lot, and the family friend convinces her to go on a speed dating thing, which would have been characteristic of it's set up to look I think the 90s or something like that is when this takes place. And she goes on speed dating and meets some people, and she goes for coffee, not even a drink. She goes for coffee with one of the guys afterwards, which is somebody she had known from the PTA. She comes home and her daughter pitches a fit, calls her a slut, calls her whatever, literally just for slightly attempting to date, saying dad would be ashamed of you and blah, blah, blah. Their father has been dead for probably about a decade. Okay. Just the most despicable whatever. And then we see them move to present day, and they're kind of paralleling it with a fight present day, which doesn't actually become a fight. She gives her mother some very basically she doesn't want her mother watching their children. She has a son and a daughter present day. She doesn't want her babysitting the kids because her mother has been getting like PET scans for early onset Alzheimer's, and she's worried that her mom might have like an Alzheimer's. She's never had an Alzheimer's episode that has impacted the kids, but she thinks that she might, and she's being super nervous. So she gives this like news just kind of in an obnoxious way to her mom too, like the delivery. So they're paralleling this. But the thing is, she's supposed to be a main character. We're supposed to be rooting for her. And I I contrast this with moments in like in Euphoria. It's a bunch of teens making just terrible decisions the entire time. Just awful, terrible, whatever. But with most of them, you come back from it. Tripping on fentanyl on the couch, ditching your girlfriend at a subway in the middle of the night when you were supposed to run off together, just all kinds of, who knows what they're actually doing in actual school, cheating this and doing whatever. And most of them you can kind of,
Homework?
no, not a book in sight. No, I swear I've never seen a teacher at the school. It's so trippy. It's a very like trippy situation where like they're supposed to be in high school, but I've never seen less effort put into creating a high school environment. But these kids are doing, just like it's terrible stuff. It's this sort of shock factor trippy show where it's like, what if every teen you've ever seen was worse than you've ever seen type of thing. And in that universe, you can kind of come back from it, but then there's certain things that can be done that you can't come back from. There'll be certain characters that are like, it may approach sort of an assault situation, or we see a kid being in a threatened situation, and it's like, okay, I understand in this universe that's how I know it's like truly the bad guy that you can't come back from. They're threatening a defenseless little girl, or they're whatever the case may be. But in Euphoria, they don't. There's kind of two girl main characters ish. There's like the one Zendaya main character, and then there's like another girl who's like her person, right? They never had so far. They never have them quite cross that line of being just truly god awful, obnoxious, despite the fact that both of them are like manipulative, or like Zendaya's character is doing stuff to try to like scream at people and get drugs and whatever. They never quite have them cross that line, and then they have all of the other characters cross lines to where you're like, okay, I get that they are not the main character. They are not who I need to root for. They're awful, terrible, no good, very bad, whatever. This Is Us does that with Kevin and Kate, and they think that they'll come back from it and get us to root for them, and I simply won't. Gun to my head, I will not root for Kevin and Kate. You can't make me do it. However, there is one side character who is your doppelganger in Euphoria, who I just want to show you real quick. Look me in the eye and tell me that that is not you and Lizzie Bennett combined in a person. Also, I have no idea why she's randomly dressed like she is also in Pride and Prejudice, because that is supposed to be at a high school New Year's Eve party present day.
I mean, I can't really see her face, but I can see the sneer of disdain, and I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense why you made that comparison.
She looks so much like this weird combination of you and Lizzie Bennett. Okay. Says, I really liked the handful of episodes of This Is Us I've watched. I haven't seen an episode since like season 1 though, but they go for tears so hard on the show. They absolutely do. Stormy says Jack died when the triplets were 16, 17. Was it? I feel like they were younger. Anyways, it had been years by the time the whole meltdown happened. This character, I barely noticed her in season 1. She was such a side character, and she's been, she's a little more main right now, even though she's supposed to be the main character's like childhood best friend. She is like, as far as goody two shoes go on this show, she's like the closest thing to a goody two shoes, I think. And they're giving her a ship with like the most dangerous drug dealer ever. It's such a good girl, bad boy ship. I'm so here for it. He also happens to be he is the only male character on the show that I like. So good. I highly do not recommend this show to you. There's not a single thing about it you would like. You would hate every second, every line, every bit of it. So I just feel like I need to caveat that. But I just wanted you to know that your doppelganger is in it. And I wanted to contrast it
Um,
with This Is Us. That's all.
okay, I'll take your word for it that we're doppelgangers. Um, Something about me and you knowing me, you've tended to find several in my life for me, and I appreciate that. Uh, I can't see the picture well enough to see if I agree visually, but just what I can see, her face of, are you kidding me? I really understand that. And if she's the goody two shoes, it means that she at least has a semblance of a brain in her head compared to everybody else doing fentanyl and what have you, which all of that makes total
She's like
sense.
the only sober, sane, normal person on the
Cool,
show.
cool.
Not that that's saying much, like, but like the bar's on the floor, but she is the bar.
I saw your tweet earlier this, I think it's today, and the comparison, it did make me go, okay, I am intrigued. I probably won't watch, but I have questions.
Do not watch this show. I cannot tell you how much you will not like. There's a Venn diagram of shows you and I will both enjoy, and then there's like the circles on the outside of like only you would enjoy and only I would enjoy. This is almost out of what even I would enjoy. Like this is just barely getting into the crescent of what I would enjoy and is nowhere near the center of what you would also enjoy.
Is it just like the ridiculousness of their choices, or is it the drama of it all?
There's a lot of just like really uncomfortable sex and drug stuff as well, and nobody's good. So like with combination of like there just being pretty consistently like multiple scenes per episode that are like actively uncomfortable to watch, and there's nothing redeeming, there's nothing pretty, there's nothing positive. You're literally just holding on to like two characters who in any other show would be the worst people in the world, like staying moderately redeemable in the context of this so you can like enjoy their friendship slash relationship with each other.
Yeah, because I am fine with the drugs and the sex, and that's fine. But like, I need even like a super morally gray, almost to the bad side character that I can root for. But that sounds like a really slim pickings for me to find the character I want and just defend them at all costs.
You
I don't
won't
have that.
like this show will not give you a Simmons, it will not give you a Felicity, it will not give you a Caitlin Snow, it will not give you there's like a certain character type that like you're willing to like watch a bunch of bullshit to watch like one person with like a sliver of goodness and like a strong sense of like stubborn justice kind of go through. There's no like stubborn justice element going on here. Literally, like nobody's morals are good and nobody's morals are consistent.
I hadn't quite put it in those words, stubborn justice, to figure out exactly the person I enjoy in characters. But it's like, that's exactly it. Wanda, Yennefer,
Yep.
Gemma, Felicity, Elizabeth. Like, thanks. I gotta.
But you notice in the characters you list some that are like anti-heroes or like quote unquote do bad thing, Wanda, whatever. It's not
Mhm.
like I know it's not that you don't like watching like bad things. It's like the kind of discomfort that is in this show and like the kind of like moral wishy-washiness is just like not going to appeal to you. If you watch it, let me know if you feel differently. But I just, like I would not recommend that you would enjoy it, but I
if
did want to
I
bring your doppelganger to your attention.
if I come back next week and go, Euphoria is the best show I've ever watched, that would be a curveball that you have never seen coming. That's what you're saying?
You come back with like glitter streaked makeup on your face and, like
Mm-hmm.
14 new piercings, a face tattoo. Carey says you need
Mm-hmm.
a mid head braid for comparison. So that's what you can come back with next
Okay,
week. The
I have a picture I will specifically send to you that you need to see to tie this whole circle together.
uh, okay, well, that was what I watched this week. I did also watch Abbott Elementary. I did also watch The Bachelor, but I tweeted out a Bachelor rant earlier today so that I wouldn't have to talk about it tonight. So I won't talk about it tonight. I've also been watching
I
Joe
saw it.
Millionaire. It's as bad as it sounds. Wait, go ahead.
I just saw your tweet, your chain of Bachelor rants. It was great. I had no idea what was going on, but I could feel the frustration.
This guy's last two brain cells are fighting for his life every week, and I am no longer going to excuse him as just being a himbo because he's honestly like, he's not hot enough to kind of get away with that. Anyways,
Is he a himbo that knows he's a himbo?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Yeah. He's a himbo who also thinks like all women are dumb, is the thing. Like himbos who think women are like smart goddesses can, those are, even if you're self-aware, if you like still can, acknowledge like smart goddesses and, then you can be elevated as a himbo as well. He's like a himbo who, like, I
Mm-hmm.
think he knows he's got 1.5 brain cells on a good day, but he also thinks all women are dumb and he can't differentiate between them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I said I wouldn't
Great.
bachelor rant, but I bachelor ranted. Oh well.
And I brought you into it. What's happening?
We're entering the twilight zone. Okay, so the show that I was going to pitch, the title is so long, Kate, and I feel like it would take the entire final 2 minutes. It's like the woman across the window who's cooking in the kitchen or something like that, and it's on Netflix. And it's some sort of like psych thriller mystery. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm looking it up.
I'm going to look up the exact title because I have it in my to watch. It's actually right next to Snowpiercer for anybody who's curious. The woman in the house across the. It's too long to list the entire thing.
Oh,
The,
I have seen that. I have seen like a thing about this.
it's like,
And it's the Amy Adams thing, right?
yeah. The woman in the house across the street from the girl in the window is the full title. It just looks like this, like, I don't know, I could be wrong, I haven't watched it, but it looks like this interesting sort of psych thriller type of vibe
Yeah.
that does seem like something you might like, does seem like something I might like. So if we do hit a desert of fictional TV and need something to watch during Olympic time, that's my recommendation.
Okay. But I had actually seen that and it looked somewhat interesting. But I completely forgot about it. So yeah, that is a possibility.
Yep. Pencil that in as a maybe, and I will check out the Critical Role animated show.
Yay.
Okay, well, it was good catching up this week on what we watched. I am very much looking forward to the continuation of Superman and Lois. I did also watch Naomi this week, but I'm kind of saving that. I'm gonna roll up some thoughts while I stay current on it, and we'll discuss in a future week.
Okay. I probably will never watch it again, but okay.
Fair enough. I will talk to you next week, same time, same place, unless it's in Twitter Spaces, and then it'll be a different place.
Mhm.
Bye.